if the entire world switched to a Bitcoin system, a Bitcoin standard, what would monetary policy be? What would be the policies of money? Well, that's the beauty. There aren't any. The only policy is there's 21 million Bitcoin and you get to use it as money, which means there's nobody manipulating interest rates. Interest rates go up and down based on human time preference, which is the way it should work. Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve should not be deciding the cost of capital, the cost of money, what it costs to loan someone money. That should be entirely dependent on the supply and demand of people's savings. So if people are saving a lot, then you can borrow money cheaply because interest rates are low because there's lots of savings and lots of people willing to lend money. If people's time preferences are high, meaning they want stuff fast and now, well, then interest rates will be high because not a lot of people will be loaning money. But what that keeps from happening is it keeps the boom-bust cycle from happening, because the way the boom-bust cycle happens is the Federal Reserve keeps interest rates low. Lots of people borrow money for stuff that the consumers don't have the future spending power to buy, and then ultimately the business is unsustainable, and you go through these booms and busts and booms and busts and booms and busts. Those booms and busts would not happen on a Bitcoin standard. Now, that doesn't mean you might not get a little bubble around AI or something like that, but it'd be very localized to specific technologies and anticipation of how big of an impact they would have. You would not get these 2008 recession sort of level events because those are only possible when the Federal Reserve is manipulating interest rates. So, beauty of what is monetary policy on a Bitcoin standard? There isn't one. It's entirely based on supply and demand of individuals based on whether they want to spend their Bitcoin now or save it for later. And if they want to save it for later, at what interest rate are they willing to loan it out to other people at? It's that simple. And that's the way the entire economy should work. And that's the way it will work when the world's on a Bitcoin standard. And then all of the manipulation goes away. The Federal Reserve goes away. There's no more manipulation of interest rates. There's no more adjustable rate mortgages that jack up after the first 5 years. Like all of the shenanigans, all of the insanity, all of the cheap credit that drives booms that result in busts. All of that is no longer part of the economy when we're on a Bitcoin standard. Now, the second part of this person's question is, what about wealth inequality caused by people who are early to Bitcoin? That is not a problem because when people are wealthy, they spend their money. Nobody just sits around hoarding money forever. So yes, there are a small number of people that are a lot wealthier because they were early in Bitcoin. And you know what those people are doing? They're doing exactly what every other wealthy person does, which means they are spending their wealth. The wealthier people get by being early in the adoption of a technology, whether that's Bitcoin, AI, the internet, no matter what technology, the wealthier they get, the more they desire to improve their quality of life and the quality of lives of their families. And same with generations. Usually, no matter how wealthy someone is, it is rare that there's any money left beyond their grandkids. Because no matter how prudent they are and how much they try, they accumulate wealth, their kids spend most of it, and their grandkids spend the rest of it, and there's nothing left. So wealth has a way of distributing itself naturally, which has happened with Bitcoin as well. The very early adopters of Bitcoin bought stuff. They improved their lives. They paid off apartments. They bought houses. They went on nice vacations. They did all of the things wealthy people do who bought $1,000 of Bitcoin that ended up being worth $1 million. Well, most of those people on the way up, they sold that Bitcoin little bits at a time to buy things to improve the lives of themselves and their families. So there is shockingly little wealth inequality in the Bitcoin ecosystem because everybody in the Bitcoin ecosystem had to work for the Bitcoin they owned. They either had to recognize the technology early and be willing to take the risk of being a very early adopter in technology, which is, again, the same way a bunch of people got wealthy on the internet and investing in internet companies because they recognized it was going to be a big deal and they were willing to take the risk. So everybody who has a lot of Bitcoin, unless they bought it recently with US dollars that they earned somehow, they got in earlier and they benefit from the price appreciation. But all of those people, like clockwork, as the price of Bitcoin appreciates, they they inevitably alter their lifestyle to improve the lives of themselves and their families. And they do that by spending Bitcoin, which results in their percentage of the 21 million Bitcoin going down over time. And the higher the price of Bitcoin goes, the more the people that own that early Bitcoin distribute it. You've seen that every single cycle in Bitcoin, where the higher the price goes, the more the OGs, the originals, the early adopters, the more they can, buy stuff with their Bitcoin. And someone who didn't have Bitcoin anymore now has some Bitcoin. And yeah, all of those people look back and think, well, I could have had more Bitcoin if I hadn't spent any of it. But you know what? Life is short. So everybody who owns Bitcoin eventually, once their wealth has increased enough as a result of the price appreciation of their Bitcoin, everyone eventually goes and spends some of their Bitcoin to improve the lives of themselves and their families, which is the way all money works. And the difference in the world of Bitcoin is there's not a bunch of shenanigans with it. There's nobody printing money out of thin air and giving it to their cronies. It's just an entirely different, more fair, more equitable, and more just world than the one we live in today. And I look forward to the world on a true Bitcoin standard worldwide.